right, I thought, how can I make myself feel better today? How can I turn that frown upside down? And the first person I thought of was not Jason Carroll, but that's who I texted first.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's who's on with us right here from Big Trail Nation. Okay, Jason, you heard that. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I mean, as much as you've dogged me the last 30 or 40 minutes, I mean, I'm surprised you even wanted to get me on today.
Well, that's the only reason I wanted to bring you on, so I could dog you before I did it. So,
yeah,
well, I think you probably have not a different perspective, but I think you're feeling a little better or a little more optimistic about a fall football season than I am. Would that be accurate?
I would think so. I mean, I felt, and even you could kind of look and see what happened last week and start saying, oh, get worried. But I think the positive thing is that the SEC is actually taking their time. And not just the SEC, but the ACC and the Big 12, because those two components are probably, those three conferences are probably going to come together and form some kind of alliance to how they handle what will be whatever football season looks like, whether that's 6, 8, 10, or 12 games. I mean, I think all those scenarios are there for them to do something that looks like a football season, whether it's half a season or the full thing.
Well, now you're talking about three leagues that, they don't share the same region, but certainly they overlap in some places. So a scheduling alliance, which is something that we'd heard from some of the group of 5 leagues trying to do the same idea. Maybe that is a possible way where, if things work out properly and the ACC does help Notre Dame the way that they've said they would, potentially that, if you're doing like a schedule of 9 conference games and 1 non-conference, that's how Arkansas gets to keep the Notre Dame game this year, but that's the only way.
No, I think there's a way that they play 10 games. You keep your 8 conference games, then you have 2 non-conference games, and Notre Dame is one of those 2 non-conference games, and Georgia Tech's another one of those non-conference games. Clemson, South Carolina is another one. I think there's a scenario in which that happens, and you only play 10 games, but you do get your 2 non-conference games, and one of those would be Notre Dame, and now would the other one be Nevada, or would it be something else? I don't know. But there's still so much at play right now, and I applaud the SEC and those other 2 leagues for not jumping the gun like the Pac-12 and the Big Ten did. And so it gives you hope still, at least for a couple more weeks, that you're going to have something. And, talking to different people, you may be playing in October or November and starting and playing 6 games. That could be something that happens. Now, everybody else says doom and gloom that in October, November, December is when it's going to get bad again, but nobody knows. I mean, just like with everything else, nobody truly knows exactly what's going to happen between now and December.
What for a fact, though, is that whatever schedule anybody comes up with here, you still have to allow for possible postponements or, cancellations, but you have to be able to move games around if let's say something happens where week 2, Mississippi State has too many players that are in quarantine and they have to shut things down for a week or 2 and Arkansas can't play them. Does that mean that game just doesn't get played, or do you have a little buffer at the end of the season? If you're going to play 10 games, give yourself 13 weeks, 14 weeks to do it. You've got to have contingency plans for the possibility. And this is going to happen in professional sports too, Jason. Sooner or later, there will be, during the seasons, somebody gets sick, teams have to go in quarantine, game can't be played. You've got to create contingencies for that, and I think that's college and pro.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be as doom and gloom as some people are making it out to be at this point, because, again, what if the numbers go down in a month? What if we see what happened up where you are right now in that area in the Northeast where the numbers have gone down? What happens if that happens in the South? And we actually hit our spike right now and it goes down in a month. So you don't really, none of us know, and nobody really knows what is going to happen between now and September. It could still be bad, or it could change and kind of go down. So I think leaving the door open for any possibility is a positive thing, and something that even me, Eeyore, leaves the opportunity to play some football, whether that's 6, 8, 10, or 12 games.
Speaking to Jason Carroll here on Halftime. Jason, so when do you, after I kind of went into the assumption yesterday that we would hear a definitive decision from the meetings with Greg Sankey and the SEC athletic directors. Didn't hear anything as of yesterday, just some convoluted statement just basically said, we're not going to tell you anything of what happened inside closed doors. So when do you expect we'll hear? Do you think we could hear something by the end of the week, or is this going to go, like as he said, to the end of the month?
I don't think we're going to hear anything until the end of the month unless hits the fan and something really blows up between now and then. They've taken all along since March 13th a wait-and-see approach and kind of let things play out. And I think that's what they're planning on doing because they know that they need to play football. And I don't know if anybody really, really believes that you're going to play football in the spring. And so you have to try to get in whatever you can get in when you can get it in. And so they believe that right now they're still going to be able to play this fall. And until something changes their mind, I think that's the approach they're taking.
If a spring season was the only option, let's just say the particularly here in the South, everything kind of stays the course of what it is right now, and they assume that the best thing is to do in the spring. And the only reason I ask this is because me and Phil were talking about this yesterday. If they were to push it to a spring, that's asking a lot for an athlete to, say, play 8 to 10 games and then turn right around in 3 months and do it all over again in the fall, assuming we're back on a normal sports schedule.
That's exactly why I don't think they will do it. Sorry to interrupt, but I don't think they will do it. I don't think they will do it for the simple health reason. I mean, you're talking about, I asked Cam Carroll this in an interview we did yesterday. If you're an athlete right now on campus, you're a football player, at any point in time, one play could be the end of your career because of a health reason, yep. Right? And so you go into a football game and you never know, or a football practice. You look at Raleigh Williams several years ago. You never know when your moment's going to end. And so how do you approach that as a football player differently than what you're approaching this with? And the only difference is that affects you. This affects everybody else. But I think that they're not going to ever put an athlete in the situation health-wise where you're playing 20 games or 24 games or 22 games in a 10, 11-month span, because everybody says that is not good for the health of that athlete. And so I just don't think they're going to do that. And that's why I don't think a spring season is going to work. That and the fact the unknown about what the virus and what the flu and all this other stuff is going to be like. So I think the approach they're taking now is the best approach.
Let me ask you one thing real quick. I'll throw it back over to Phil. We had Brett Norsworth. He's a host of Memphis Radio on the Morning Rush a couple days ago, and didn't have necessarily he wasn't disrespectful or anything, but didn't have the highest things to say about Greg Sankey as far as the handling throughout this whole process, saying that kind of like behind the 8 ball, particularly when the Big Ten announced their decision, and just kind of, I believe in his words, it was kind of just falling behind a little bit. In your estimation, just kind of how this whole thing is played out, how do you think Greg Sankey and his people with the SEC has handled this situation?
I think they've handled it better than the Big 12 and the Pac-12. I mean, I really believe that. And the national guys, some of the local guys that want to complain about what the SEC is doing, I think are out of bounds. Again, you should want somebody to be as positive as you can be about trying to do something instead of everything negative. And a lot of those national guys that are criticizing leagues are guys that they want to politicize it or do whatever. I honestly think that they should be playing if they want to play. I put a tweet out yesterday that, in my opinion, these athletes are adults now. They're 18 years old. I don't know how many people are asking them if they truly want to play. And if they don't want to play, that's great. You give them a red shirt year, and if you've already taken a red shirt year, the NCAA gives you another red shirt year so you're comfortable playing. But I think this should be left up to the athletes in a lot of cases, because I think the athletes are the ones that are laying it all out there on the line. We talk about wanting to give them money and do all this other stuff, name, image, and likeness. Well, this is the opportunity for the athlete to say yay or nay on whether or not we want to play. I go to what baseball's doing, right? You got 60-man roster. And at any point in time, the number 60 man could be on that roster. Well, you got 120 guys on a college football team. At any point in time, you may need number 120. But let the players and athletes decide whether or not they want to compete. And if they don't want to compete, you just let them go be a student for a year and let them redshirt. But I think they should leave it up to the athletes in a lot of cases. And people say, well, they may be dumb, young kids or whatever, but they're adults and they have the right to make their own decisions.
So what the SEC has done is buy themselves some time to survey the scene, see what happens in the next 2-3 weeks, and then make a decision from there about what the next few months will look like. But buying time only does so much. You need people to buy into what you need to do in order to help get us to that point to where Greg Sankey and the school presidents feel comfortable moving ahead with the fall football season. And the messaging that comes out of yesterday's meeting, even the video promo that the SEC put together where they show all 14 head football coaches wearing a mask with their school logo on the mask. I mean, Nick Saban's been saying this for the last few months. We see Sam Pittman wearing a mask when he is out. The message is there. Greg Sankey has pointedly said, look, these things have become politicized. They didn't need to be politicized. This has sort of led us to where we are right now. Governor Hutchinson tried to make the connection weeks ago. If you want football, this mask has something to do with that. And some people just are not open to listening to that. I hope yesterday is like the last chance to hear what these people are saying.
Well, I don't know if it may be the last chance, and I agree that should be something people buy into, but you're never going to get people to buy in completely to that, and that's the reality of the situation. I mean, people make up their mind, and they're going to do what they're going to do, and there may be consequences for everybody else. Again, I believe that these athletes that are up there doing these voluntary workouts now leading into mandatory workouts that are going on, and then these walkthroughs that are going to start and all this stuff, they're there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to go compete. And I think if that gets taken away from them, there's issues that are going to come out of that, mental issues and other issues that I believe are going to come out of that if that's taken away from them. Now, it's our responsibility as fans or whatever to make sure that we do that. But I think there's things that you could do to make sure that those things happen, even if those guidelines aren't followed. I think there's things they can do, and if these athletes are willing to do them to compete on their level, that some of the other things may not matter. But it's all how these schools and presidents and ADs and the conferences want to handle it, and not necessarily up to the athlete who's actually going out there and competing for these universities and these cities.
Jason, it's good talking with you, man. I am smiling a little bit more than I was before the interview started. So,
well, I thought we were going to have some fun, not just talk about all this. Here's my nickname Here's my nickname, and I know you probably got to go. It's the Washington Americans.
There you
is
go.
what you do. So, you got the Americans, and then you got the Nationals in baseball. You got the Americans, and then whatever head or mascot you want to put on the logo. But every 4 years or 8 years, depending on the president, that's your mascot. So you could be the Washington Americans, and then the mascot changes depending on who the president is, and then you could just have some fun with that.
Wow, a statute of limitations on a on what the logo can look like.
At the Nationals games, you got the presidents out there running in the outfield racing each other. Why can't you just make the president mad? Yeah.
Term limited logos. It's good stuff, Jason.
There you go.
Gotta go.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
All right, Cherry at the top of halftime right after this.